This is Phil of the Phil Rosenberg Show, and I'm here right now because I want to give you a little bit of context for what you're about to see. It was recorded several days before the protests and violence that erupted in Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January, and the questions and answers will not necessarily reflect our new reality. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Phil Rosenberg Show. I am your host, Phil Rosenberg, and tonight we're going to do what is undoubtedly going to be one of my favorite episodes of the Phil Rosenberg Show that I will ever do. Because tonight I have two interesting folks on who hold what I think is going to be diametrically opposed views on many subjects, and two people who I know a bit and who I have a good deal of respect for. In support of Joseph Biden this evening is David Rosenberg, no relation to me, by the way. He's an attorney in private practice in New York City and an active member of the Democratic Party. David's previous experience in several Democratic campaigns, and in 2016, David joined the party's team of volunteer legal professionals to combat voter suppression and to prepare for potential legal challenges. Here to press the case for Donald Trump is Mike Hovell, who is an enrolled agent and tax advisor who studies tax law to provide access to the tax breaks usually reserved for the wealthy. He's a Republican with a libertarian streak since the age of 16. Mike sees a lot wrong with the government, particularly in his area of expertise, the U.S. tax code. So, guys, I want to really thank you for being here tonight. If I were sitting in your seat, I'm not sure how I'd feel. So let me ask you, how are you feeling, Mike?
Feeling great.
How are you feeling tonight, David?
I'm feeling good. Thanks for having me, Phil.
Pleasure is absolutely mine. So let's dig right in, why don't we? David, I have my first question here for you. This is concerning the pandemic. According to the Financial Times, more than 77 million cases of coronavirus have been confirmed globally, and more than 1,690,000 people have died, with more than 18 million cases and over 309,000 deaths confirmed in the United States alone. The virus has spread to all 50 states in the U.S., and in absolute numbers, more people have died than anywhere else in the world. And also, per capita, more people have died anywhere else in the world. Why has the United States got the worst of this disease, both in raw numbers and per capita, David? And what, if anything, would you have done differently than Donald Trump if you'd been given the chance?
Failure in leadership. Period. Donald Trump did some good things, and he loves to tell you about it. He shut down travel from China. Of course, that was a couple of weeks too late, after 40,000 some odd people had already traveled here from China. He was slow for mask mandates. He was slow to close businesses. And most importantly, and as we see just up to today with the pandemic, he's failed to recognize that the only way we can solve this pandemic is by putting the economy on hold and making sure people can survive. That's not stimulus payments, they're relief payments, to make sure that people can afford not to go out, not to go to work and do it. And the first thing that I would have done, given the opportunity, was one, not throw out the WHO test, which worked. Instead, we used the CDC test, which didn't, which set us back for weeks on testing. Second would have been implement immediate and widespread relief for everyone. And third, use the Defense Production Act to actually manufacture the equipment that we needed.
Thank you, David. Okay, Mike, you have a 1-minute retort.
To say there was an abject leadership in the federal government is, first of all, an oversimplification and letting governors off the hook. Donald Trump sent ventilators to New York because the governor, Cuomo, asked for them. It came out that Governor Cuomo was hiding ventilators for use in a later time if he needed them, saying that he didn't get enough when he did get enough. Donald Trump sent money, supplies, testing. If you want to talk about testing, you have people testing positive and Governor Cuomo putting them back into nursing homes, murdering the most susceptible people in our society. Older men and women who were dying alone and their family was not allowed to see them because the governor of New York decided to put them, people who tested positive, back in there. So he
10
had a
seconds.
hospital ship that Trump sent to house those people had he used it, but it went unused.
Thank you, Mike. David, you have a 30-second slot for a closing statement.
Yes, Donald Trump sent money. Yes, Donald Trump sent ventilators. All of them after he came under intense pressure to do it. Let's remember what Jared Kushner said about the states, particularly the blue states. It's a blue state problem. The fact is the federal government failed, and any realistic observer would acknowledge that.
All right, Mike, this next question is for you. On the 6th of January, 2021, Congress will attempt to certify the results of the Electoral College. And Trump has recently tweeted that as long as Republicans have courage, they can nullify the results, and as part of that process, give Trump 4 more years in office. If this effort fails, should martial law be declared and the election rerun and overseen by the United States military in the states that flipped for Biden?
If you have fraudulent ballots that are fake, that were, let's say, taken apart from the signature envelope, or that were put in by people that don't exist, yes, they get counted again, just like they got counted the first time. Second of all, in Georgia, if you want to talk about Georgia, right here is a picture that is from a security camera when most of the election observers were kicked out. Even the people counting the ballots were kicked out, and they were taking a ballots in a box from under a table to count while no one was there. As far as martial law, I mean, people think about tanks rolling down the street. What they're saying is, if there was fraud, if we cannot get a fair hearing in a civil court, we would like a military court to look at the evidence. If the evidence shows fraud, then we take it from there. If not, that's over.
Your retort, David.
The thing is, look what the Trump campaign has actually filed, despite Rudy Giuliani's ridiculous claims of actual voter fraud sweeping the country. The Trump legal team has not actually made any filings in any of their dozens of lawsuits alleging actual fraud. There are a couple of procedural violations here, some things that their poll watchers weren't close enough to the ballots there, but no allegations in their actual court filings about fraud, as much as Rudy Giuliani saying on the record, this is not a fraud case.
Let me ask you, are you arguing then that strict scrutiny should apply here?
No, the normal scrutiny should apply. If we had alleged fraud, yes, but this is not a fraud case.
So can we just stop talking about this supposed massive voter fraud that even the Trump campaign,
10 seconds.
Donald Trump himself, is not actually talking about?
All right, Mike, closing statement for that question?
The closing statement is that there was fraud, actual fraud, and Georgia even admitted, the governor of Georgia said, when we run the recount, we will find fraud. When you take signature matching requirements from a 90% match and you take them down to 10%, where you have no idea if this was the actual person.
5 seconds, Mike.
I'm sorry, but that needs to be investigated.
Thanks for that, Mike. Okay, the next question is for David concerning Hunter Biden. Attorney General Barr decided not to assign a special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden, having insisted that the Hunter Biden tax fraud probe was already in competent hands and being tended to with the Department of Justice appropriately. My question, David, is did William Barr give Hunter Biden a free pass, and was he helped by the media if he did?
No, there's nothing to suggest that Hunter Biden got a free pass. He's being investigated by a Republican-appointed United States attorney. The reason why we have special counsels in this country is because politically appointed prosecutors might be reluctant to go after someone in their own party. In fact, the anomaly for this is Donald Trump, who, when he needed a special counsel appointed to investigate his campaign's connections with Russia and his obstruction of justice, they appointed a Republican for the special counsel. But the history of special counsels are such that you investigate, you appoint someone from the opposite party to do it. And here it's a Republican-appointed United States attorney investigating the son of the Democratic president-elect. Now, in a couple of weeks, I know Mike is not looking forward to this day, but Joe Biden will be president, and sometime after that, he's going to be able to nominate a new U.S. attorney for the District of Delaware, who's going to be in charge of this investigation. And that nominee's ability to be impartial in the Hunter Biden case is worth discussing when we have a nominee. But until then, the Republican-appointed U.S. attorney and the career prosecutors at the U.S. Attorney's Office are more than competent to do it. And the idea that Bill Barr is some kind of lackey conspirator with the mainstream media to boost Democratic electoral chances is just laughable after what we've seen in the last 2 and some odd years since he's been in the job.
Thanks, David. Mike, you have a minute to respond.
I think Attorney General Barr did drop the ball a little bit in that he has a lot of faith in the establishment. He comes from background in government and politics his entire life. So he saw it as unnecessary to put in a special prosecutor. I would have done, the opposite, though I don't really believe in special prosecutors. But in this case, he kind of dropped the ball in that he was not pushing the envelope. He wasn't a lackey, if you will. And he has stuck up a lot for Trump, but always has protected the establishment as well.
Yeah, I'd just say when Bill Barr was nominated for the job to replace Matthew Whitaker, who was unconstitutionally holding that job, I and a lot of other Democrats and lawyers were thankful because we all thought that Bill Barr was an institutionalist who'd protect the institution. Nothing about his tenure showed that he cared anything about the institution other than his own power in it. And that's straight from the Mueller report all the way down to being Donald Trump's own Roy Cohn. Now, if he found constitutional Jesus in the waning days of the Trump administration, I'm happy, but I think he made the right call.
Okay. Mike, this one's for you. George Floyd's death sparked nationwide protests over racial injustice, economic inequity, and police brutality. Trump said at the time, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts," according to the New York Times. My question is, should Trump have called out the military and started shooting protesters, as he tweeted?
I found this chapter in our history to be a shame. The images and videos that I was seeing was people attacking random people in the street, beating them unconscious, looting stores in multiple cities, setting fires to police stations, setting fires to the post office. That is not acceptable. It's not, people protesting. These are riots in multiple coordinated effort in many states at the same time, which does call for the use of military, yes.
It's unfortunate that Mike is conflating the racial injustice and the clear frustration of Black and brown communities across the country with riots. It shouldn't be an intellectual contradiction to say that I am against brutal police violence, and I'm also against rioting, and I'm also against people getting out and getting all close to each other during a global pandemic where we're all stuck inside. Those are all things that we should be able to balance in our heads at the same time. And we can't do it because of the way that our political dialogue is.
All right. Thanks very much. Mike, would you like to make a closing statement? 30 seconds.
It is unfortunate that we are so far apart that we not only have such differing opinions on the facts, we have such differing facts, if you were, that we actually see different footage. We see, we're told the news through our own political lens.
Thank you, Mike. All right, this will be the last question for this portion of the show. David, the general consensus of experts in the field of cybersecurity is that the recent hacking of U.S. corporations and government institutions was done by the Russians. Yet, for some reason, Trump is pushing back against this conclusion. What is his motivation for doing that, in your opinion?
My God, if I can unpack Donald Trump's psyche, I'd have a different profession, different set of letters after my name. But there are people who are experts in this, and Donald Trump is a pathological narcissist. I think is a psychological bruised ego response to the quote-unquote Russia hoax. He sees anyone that says that Russia's bad is implicitly questioning his legitimacy as president of the United States, and he just can't do it. And it's all nice to reminisce about a 74-year-old man's bruised ego, 72, however old he is. But these have real consequences. This cyber attack is massive and on a scale that we've never seen. And if we started a national response to this today, it would take years and hundreds of millions of dollars to repair. In the meantime, we're not doing it because Donald Trump says it may have been China, may have been other people. And the damage persists, and they get further into our networks and critical infrastructure, and that much harder to get out once a President Joe Biden gets in and starts moving.
All right. Thank you, David. Mike, 1 minute retort from you.
I think that the intelligence community in our country is totally co-opted, and they lie for a living, and they always have. As far as Russia being this bogeyman that people make it out to be, sure, they're bad actors, but they don't have the power, the money, or the resources that they used to have when they were our enemy. China is the only real threat to the world and world peace and world order. Russia, if they're involved, it's not to the extent in which the press likes them to be involved. This is all a cover to cover what China is doing.
Thank you, Mike. David, 30 seconds to close on this question.
Yeah, this is more of this absolute thinking that it absolutely can't be Russia. Russia's great and China's the only problem. No, China's a problem. China's a very big problem. So is North Korea, so is Iran, so is Russia. They're all problems at the same time, and Russia certainly has the cyber capability to do something like this. The intelligence community is telling us it was Russia, but even if it was China, Donald Trump is still not doing anything to marshal a federal government response to get these malicious actors out of our
5 seconds. Thank you, David. Okay, guys, thanks very much. That is the first part of the show. Now I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you the exact same question. You're going to have 2 minutes to answer. Whoever I ask the question of first is going to have 2 minutes to answer. The other person will have 1 minute to respond, and then we'll switch with the exact same question. So we'll start with Mike. Mike, name three things you like. Name three things you like about Joseph Biden's policies.
Nothing, and nothing. Nothing that he comes with gives me any pride or hope. And he talks about unity. How are we unifying anyone? Half the country doesn't even believe he won.
10 seconds, Mike. 10 seconds.
He's not unifying anything. They are taking over.
All right. Thank you, Mike. David, 30-second retort.
I'm just very thankful that nothing, and nothing is a minority opinion about the country's feeling towards what they like about Joe Biden. This is a man who's been in public life for significantly longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
And, most people are able to find something that they like, and the sooner we can all get to finding some redeeming qualities with people we disagree with, the sooner we're going to be getting back to some semblance of normal.
Okay, good that you should say that, because I have the same question for you. David, can you name three things you like about Donald Trump's policies?
Sure. I think first, his foreign policy in the Middle East and his ability to put history aside and understand that the goal there is to foster cooperation among countries. And this is something that I haven't always agreed with his tactics on, but I think the results speak for themselves in that you see greater normalization.
It's been over 25 years since the last peace accord was signed with a country from the Arab world. The fact that the United Arab Emirates and Israel have decided to normalize ties with one another is a significant step change in what's happening in the Middle East.
And if there's anything of the post-World War II order, is that we believe that countries that do business together don't fight with each other. And reducing the possibility for conflict there is helpful. Second, I think Donald Trump is in many ways focused our debate on just the nature of our democracy. We talk about this election in the record numbers, that's a product of Donald Trump. That's not a product of Joe Biden being an inspiring figure. That's 150, 160 million people who were so motivated by Donald Trump to get involved.
10 seconds.
Process again. And third, I think he is forcing even us Democrats to look at the middle of the country and reckon with what we are and are not delivering for.
Thank you, David. Okay, Mike, 30-second retort.
I agree with most of the stuff David said. There are many people who don't know about any of these good things that Trump has done because they haven't been reported on the news, so-called.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Mike, this question is for you first. What is white privilege?
Something that doesn't exist, and it's a nice term to allow people to feel like they don't have to try harder because they are discriminated against, and therefore nothing, just hard work will not produce an effect because they're from an underclass, let's say.
Thank you, Mike. 30-second retort, David.
I think I'll just jump to take the question. The thing about white privilege is it's not something that is easy to define, but it's something that's easy to illustrate. The honest to God truth is, if any of us hadn't a run-in with police, just like George Floyd did, it is much less likelier that we're going to end up with a cop on our necks for 9 minutes. That's just reality. And we don't have to live with that fear. We don't have to live with that understanding. In New York City, we didn't have to walk down the street and see a cop and worry if we were going to get stopped and frisked and lose a half hour of our day and a year's worth of our dignity.
Mike, you have 30 seconds to retort.
Maybe growing up in whatever community you grew up in, you are never stopped and harassed by cops, but I can tell you where I grew up, the cops didn't care what color you are, they harassed everyone the same. That being said, the thing about police brutality and policing communities of color, these are such complex issues. Why are there so many police in minority neighborhoods? Was it because there were more crimes? Was it because community leaders asked for more police, begged for more police, and now there's over-policing?
5 seconds.
There are many things to look at to say white privilege is a cop-out and an oversimplification of the issue.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, next question is for you, Mike. What is systemic racism?
Systemic racism could be anything from people throwing away a resume because it has a minority sounding name. It could be any multitude of things. But to say that America as a whole is systemically racist is not based in reality. If it was systemically racist, we would have to have a lot more psychologists and psychiatrists treating Black people and brown people from all other countries trying to come into America, if it's such a hostile country to them, because this is the land of the free. We used to be anyway. I don't know about going forward if Joe Biden becomes president. However, the thing is that this gives an opportunity. Is it perfect? No. No system is. This is the best we got. If somebody is racist themselves, you know what? It's not popular to say, but as an American, people have the right to feel and think and say their views. They are not to be
10 seconds, Mike.
Society and then made to be ostracized because they have a differing opinion. Do you want to hang out with a racist? No. Should he be in jail? No.
Thank you, Mike. You have a 30-second retort, David.
All of the different instances of racism, some of which Mike mentioned, they're connected. And the thing is, we can't solve one. We can't just say that we're going to solve racism in policing. because there's also racism in the larger criminal justice system. It's the fact that there are barriers to land ownership, particularly in the South. The fact that there are barriers to voting
10 seconds, please.
in the South. And all of these things are together, and that's what makes the racism systemic, and that's what makes it difficult to deal with.
Thank you, David. Mike, 30-second retort, please.
I'm glad that you mentioned the criminal justice system and education, being that Joseph Biden, being in his long history in government, was the major proponent for the crimes bill, which disproportionately affected the Black and brown communities for longer sentences. And it's Joe Biden who said he did not want to send his children into a mixed school because they would be learning in a racial jungle. So it is someone like Joe Biden who has been in this country
10 seconds.
and represents all of the racism that you guys are talking about.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to move to the second part of our show, which is going to be characterized by the ability of each of you to ask the other a question. The person receiving the question will have 1 minute to answer. The person asking the question will have 30 seconds to respond to the answer they just got. So, Mike, let's start with you. What question would you like to ask David?
My question is, if there was actual fraud, if there was actually ballot stuffing to a degree that really changed the outcome of the election, is that something that you want to just go past, move on? Let's do better next time? Or is that something that you think should be investigated if it actually did occur?
The idea that we'd have that kind of fraud would be staggering. One of the things I don't like about federal election systems is that we don't have federal presidential elections. We have 51 different states running elections with different rules and different systems throughout, and that makes this process complicated and results in things like what we saw in 2000. But one of the plus sides of it, it makes it difficult for foreign interference, and it makes it difficult for domestic interference at the scale that Mike is talking about. Now, of course, if there were even allegations of fraud at that scale, yeah, it needs to be investigated, and if someone's got evidence, they better come up with it quick, because now it's been almost 2 months since the election, and no one's put it forward. And, that's the idea that we're going to sit and talk about this fraud and not actually just put up or shut up is dangerous to democracy, because it's undermining
10 seconds.
and it's hurting the Republican Party in the Georgia Senate runoffs coming up next week.
All right. Thank you very much, David. Mike, 30-second retort.
What would be hurting the Republican Party in the Georgia runoff is if they don't push this, because us Donald Trump voters will stay home from the Republican Party. We have no problem with that. But just like you're saying, put up or shut up. If the Democrat Party and if the government didn't think that there was anything to these allegations, they would have they would have it in the Supreme Court. They would look at it and then say, you know what, Donald Trump, you made it all up. You have nothing. And they would end it once and for all. But when you have 75 million people believing this election was stolen,
Thank you, Mike.
and they're not putting it in the court, something's wrong.
Thank you, Mike. David, you have a question for Mike?
Yeah, and this is going to change gears a bit. There is this nagging question of, does Donald Trump want to be president? News reports show that he hasn't had briefings in months. He's not engaged in day-to-day decisions, all while we have thousands of people dying every single day from a pandemic. International forces, most people think it's Russia, you want to call it China, whomever, invading United States government and U.S. corporate systems, an economy that is on the precipice of free fall, and Donald Trump going to Mar-a-Lago, playing his little game where he says he's going to veto things and then not doing it, and not being involved in negotiations, then being involved after the fact. Doesn't Donald Trump have an obligation at this point to at least run the country for the little bit of time he has left if he's going to have another 4 years?
Okay, let's talk about running the country. The amazing thing is that Donald Trump, with the little government experience he had, was in Washington, D.C., holding briefings every single day on the COVID virus, pushing pharmaceutical companies to make a vaccine in record time, while Congress went on vacation. They went home. The people who have decades and decades and decades of experience in government, in public health, left.
10 seconds, Mike.
Nancy Pelosi was at home eating ice cream while people are starving in the street on a late night show, joking around, thinking it's funny, while the president is in the Washington, D.C. taking care of people.
Yeah, those briefings that Donald Trump had included the ones where he peddled conspiracy theories about drugs that don't really work and told people to inject bleach into their system, and all the while actually didn't do anything, right? A lot of talk about the Defense Production Act to make PPE. None of that was actually done. And this is more of Donald Trump's government by gesture and Munchausen by proxy, and creating problems so he can be the guy to pretend to fix them.
Mike, why don't you ask a question now?
David, does it concern you that the evidence shows, the scientific research shows, that the United States, through the NIH, headed by Fauci, and USAID in 2014, funded Xi Jinping of the Wuhan lab to engineer a new COVID virus. And then they're letting people travel all over the world in January for the new year, already knowing people are infected. Now, do you think it's concerning that China not only deliberately spread a virus around the world, but that we actually helped in engineering it in the Wuhan lab?
So I'm going to bifurcate the question, because the supposed evidence about NIH-funded studies about bat viruses is not something I'm aware of, and I have some significant doubts it exists. But
Fair enough.
Talk about the China part of this for a second. And this is more of this absolutist talk from that either Russia's the enemy or China's the enemy, and it can't be both, and it can't be either, and it can't be a little bit of everything. Just remember that under Donald Trump, we closed the CDC office in Wuhan that could have been on the ground, if not to help China contain this, but to actually give us a heads up of what was coming and better equip states, governors, local governments, the federal government to be able to respond. So there's plenty of blame to go around, and I don't see why my blaming Donald Trump for this precludes me from saying that the Chinese Communist Party...
10 seconds.
And they need to be held accountable for this as well. And hopefully, under the next president, we use the levers of international order to rain down on China and actually rain...
Thank you, David.
So it's a sweet story you tell of mishandling. There was no mishandling going on. There was purposeful worldwide dissemination of a virus. They knew. It's not this part of the government knew and this part didn't. They were waiting to sign a trade deal to lock down Wuhan. They signed a trade deal with us, locked down Wuhan, and then are upset that Donald Trump is stopping travel from there. So to think that they mishandled rather than purposefully spread a virus.
5 seconds.
Sweet on yourself.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for sharing your points of view this evening. I know that it can be a little bit of a source of stress, and we're getting it done late at night, and I really appreciate the time that you've taken to join me. I want to thank our audience for being here as well. Everyone have a wonderful evening, and we're going to talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks very much. Hi, this is Phil of the Phil Rosenberg Show, and I'm here to ask you to do me a small favor. Just take your finger, reach out, click the button that says subscribe. Just take your finger, reach out, and click the button that says subscribe. I need a bunch of subscribers. The more subscribers I have, something good happens. I don't even know what that is. They tell me I got to have more subscribers. I believe them. So please do that for me. I'd appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the show.